Okay, so hello guys, and in today's session, we will learn how to install SSP uh, infrastructure in any organization, and we will see um what all components are required for the installation of for the functioning of uh, uh, Sterling Secure Proxy in any infrastructure. Okay, so we are going to see how to install uh, SSP configuration manager, means Sterling Secure Proxy configuration manager, and we will also see how to install Sterling Secure Proxy engine. Okay, and we will then configure uh, your configuration manager to connect to engine so that it push all the configurations that we have defined in the configuration manager to engine. Okay, so there are two softwares are involved that we have to have installed to make SSP as a part of your SI ecosystem or SI infrastructure. Okay, so one is Sterling Secure Proxy Engine and other is Sterling Secure Proxy Configuration Manager. Okay, in when we in during our discussion and when we normally talk about these two components, we actually refer SSP configuration, Sterling Secure Proxy Configuration Manager, as configuration manager, or sometimes we call it as SSP configuration manager. So today also I will be interchangeably referring it as a configuration manager, or sometime I will be saying the Sterling Secure Proxy Configuration Manager or the SSP Configuration Manager. Similarly, we have Sterling Secure Proxy Engine. Okay, and uh, we normally refer it as engine only, or sometimes we call it as SSP engine. Okay, so SSP engine, SSP configuration manager, or we have configuration manager or the engine. So these are the few words that you will be hearing during our discussion and all the sessions uh, of SSP. Okay, and I mean you also need to be habituated to or used to these words, because in your organization when you have some discussion, people will be using these words interchangeably, so you need to accustom with this. Okay, and so before I start the installation procedure, I would like to first introduce you with these components. I want to first let you know that what is the functionality or the feature provided by these two software components, and where these components get installed in any infrastructure. Okay, so that will give you better picture and understanding around these two components. Okay, so we will learn that what is functionality, and what is why we need Sterling Secure Proxy Configuration Manager, and why we need engine. Okay, so before we understand these two components, right, we have to understand one more thing, uh, and that is something related to networking, right? So we don't need to know in great detail, but if it is good to know on high level that what is what different this a small networking concept. Okay, so that I'm going to introduce you now. Okay, so just I'm trying to make a good picture, so give me a second. Perfect. Okay, so in any infrastructure, okay, or infrastructure of any company generally has at least two zones. Okay, one is called DMZ and other is called core network. Okay, and sometime we also have a firewall here. Okay, and I mean your organization may have different infrastructure, or if you go and work for some other company, they may have different infrastructure. Okay, so it depends that how secure is the network infrastructure of your company. That basically define how many DMZ zones you will have, and how many and how they are configured. Okay, but in this picture that you are seeing right now, this is very common in all organizations. Okay, so core network, which is considered very secure. Okay, and we have another network which we call DMG. DMG stands for demilitarized zone, right? So this DMZ word also has a history that you can search in the Google, and you will find that there is a place uh, between South Korea and the North Korea, and that is a basically border of these two countries, and there is a space on the border between these two countries where no one is allowed. So no military is allowed, no person is allowed over there. Okay, so that is why uh, that that place between at the border of South Korea and the North Korea is called the DMZ, right? So this DMZ has come from there. Okay, so DMZ is also secure zone, but it's comparatively less than your core network. Okay, so we consider DMZ as most secure, I mean, sorry, core network as most secure, and all our secure applications, financial application, and the main applications uh, are resides in the core network. Okay, so say suppose your Sterling integrator will be installed here. Okay, or your mainframe or your CD control center, right? These applications are Sterling control center, right? SCC. Okay, these applications uh, are always installed in the core network. Okay, then we have a DMZ zone which is less secure as compared to core network, and this these two networks are divided or secured by a firewall. Okay, I will remove this because I want to draw a different diagram here. Okay, so these two networks are, okay, these two networks are divided by or separated by a firewall. Okay, so this is your firewall. This line depict your firewall, and this firewall basically separates your core network, and basically this firewall is the component that make this network as core network or the secure network. Okay, then we have a DMZ. In many companies I have seen there is one more firewall here somewhere. Okay, okay, you have one more firewall. Okay, this can be another firewall. Okay, then you have, this is where you will have your load balancer. LB, load balancer. Okay, and then you have your 1 second, external partners. Okay, now say suppose this is your external partner. Okay, so external partner is the person who basically want to do some file transformation or file transactions with you. I mean, he want to send file to your organizations. Okay, so and these two guys, your load balancer and your external partner, will be connected with each other through internet. Okay, internet, they're connected through the internet. Okay, so any file transfer request or communication initiated by the external partner first come to your load balancer. Load balancer know what it need to do, right? And then sometime it do the IP address changes and few other things that we are not going to details of that. So after doing that, it sends the request through this through a specific on a specific port or through a hole on this firewall to your DMZ, and then DMZ do something, and then it sends your communication session to your core network. Okay, through a hole in this firewall. Okay, so this is the normal communication session that happens in any organization, but we will look into this details in our next session, or maybe next to next session, when we will start configuring and installing communication adapters. Okay, communication adapters in the SSP. But in the today's session, our main focus is to understand SSP engine and SSP configuration manager. Okay, so we will focus on we will concentrate on that, and we will understand how these two components works and what is the significance of these two components. Okay, now let's directly jump to that. So we have one component called the SSP configuration manager, and other component called called SSP engine. Okay, so these are the two components. So here is your two components. Okay, this is your SSP engine, and this is your SSP CM. Okay, there you go. So the first point that I want you to make a note of is SSP, Sterling Secure Proxy configuration manager is installed in core network. Okay. Next, your SSP engine is installed in DMG, demilitarized zone. Okay. This is the first point that you always need to remember. Got it? Okay. And be held space. Okay. because I need to draw one more diagram here. Okay, we have enough space. So this is your SSP engine is installed in the DMG. Okay, why so? You can easily understand it. Okay, now if you want to understand that, before that you have to understand what is the use of SSP engine in this infrastructure and what is the use of configuration manager in this infrastructure. So SSP engine is the component, is the software that hosts, okay, that hosts your communication adapters. Okay, when I'm saying hosts communication adapter means if you have created a FTP server adapter, your FTP server adapter instance will be running, okay, will be running in this box. Okay, it will be running in SSP engine. Okay, so instances of all the communication adapters, it may be your FTP, it may be SFTP, it may be FTPS, it may be HTTP, it may be HTTPS, it may be Connect Direct CD. Okay, actual adapter, actual adapters and instances of those adapters gets created in the engine. So your engine run those adapters. Okay, now come over here, configuration manager. Okay, what configuration manager do? As you can understand from its name, configuration manager is configuration manager. That means configuration manager just holds or contains definition of your adapters. Okay, it just stores the definition or the configuration of your communication adapters. Okay, what do you mean by definition of adapters, or what do you mean by the configuration of your adapters? So let me explain that. Okay, with an example. So say suppose you have an FTP server adapter, or I created a FTP server adapter. Okay, so I will create FTP server adapter here in configuration manager SSPCM. Okay, I will create the FTP server adapter in the configuration manager. So I will open a web page where I will define name of my FTP server adapter is A. I want this server adapter to run on port 21. I want it as a vanilla FTP, means no SSL. Okay, I want uh, 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 user ID to be user authentication as pass through. Okay, so all this configuration is defined in configuration manager. Now, one more important thing that I would like to tell you, these two software does not need any database. Okay, for the installation of these two software, we don't need any database. That means SSP configuration manager does not use any database. So where this software stores this configuration details. So it stores these configuration details in your file system in file. Okay, so I mean definitely this server is installed in some uh, operating system server box, right? So in that uh, file system of that box, right, it creates file and it writes all this configuration. Okay, in the file system. So it creates a file. It stores all the configuration that you have entered in this file, and it stores this file in the file system itself. Okay, and to make configuration secure so that no one can come and see what configuration you have defined and what password, user IDs and passwords you have defined, these files are encrypted to make it secure. Okay, and security is a main focus. That is why we are doing all these things, right? So configurations are stored in the file, and the file is stored in the file system, and the files configuration files are encrypted. Okay, so point is, your configuration manager, in the configuration manager we define, and you define all the configuration related to your uh, server adapters or your communication adapters, and all the details are saved or resides in configuration manager SSPCM. Okay, so that is use of configuration manager. Okay, SSP engine does not store any configuration detail. It does not have any configuration information. It does not store anything, because this piece of software is installed in less secure zone, right? So we cannot keep our configurations in DMZ zone. So that is why we have SSP engine installed in our core network, and SSP engine has all the configuration stored. Okay. Now, next question is, how SSP engine get this configuration information. So to understand that, I haven't explained you. There is one more little detail here, and that is this. What is this? So when we install SSP engine and configuration manager, okay, we define a port. Okay, say suppose for the SSP engine the port is X, and SSP CM port is Y. Okay, port is Y. On this port, these two components or these two pieces of software communicate with each other. Okay, these two software components communicate with each other. So what happens? You start the configuration manager. You define your configurations related to your server adapters. Okay, and when you bring up your SSP engine, right? SSP configuration manager pushes all the configuration. Okay, pushes all the configuration that is defined for this engine to this component. SSP engine read those information, okay, or receives that information or configuration details, and starts adapters. It starts server adapters. So this is basically your SSP engine that hosts your adapter, or it is your SSP engine that has instances of your communication adapter. Okay, so as in my example, I created a FTP adapter A with on port number 21 with no SSL, with pass-through authentication, right? SSP engine push this configuration or information to SSP engine on specific port on yes X, on which uh, SSP engine is listening. So when your configuration manager, SSP configuration manager pushes this information, SSP engine accepts that information, and it starts, okay, or instantiate, okay, or it hosts a new FTP server adapter. So it will start a FTP server adapter here that will listen for connection on port number 21. So how it get this 21? Because I have defined a FTP server adapter on port number 21 in the configuration manager. Configuration manager has pushed this information or configuration to your SSP engine. Now your SSP engine has an FTP server adapter running on port 21. Okay. Similarly, for other protocols also, we defined configuration here. SSP engine stores the configurations, and whenever SSP engine needs or whenever is that requires, SSP engine push that configuration to SSP engine. Okay, SSP configuration manager push that information to SSP engine. So that is a very important thing that you need to remember. Okay, in fact, say suppose currently I have an FTP server adapter that is running on port 21, and I change my mind, and due to some requirement, I want to run this adapter on port 24, right? Where I will define this? You have to define, or you have to change the port number for adapter A, FTP adapter A in the SSP CM. So you go and edit your configuration and you change the port number from 21 to 24. Once you change it, right, in the SSP CM, we will see these things. Okay, in SSP CM, right, we have a screen where we can select the engine, and you will see a button that says push configuration. Okay, so when you click on that button, SSP engine push the configuration or updated configuration to your SSP engine. SSP engine again accept that information and act on it. Okay, and so in our case, what it will do, it will stop the FTP adapter instance that is running on 21 and start the maybe the same instance on port 24. Okay, so this is very important. I hope you understood that what is SSP engine and what is SSP configuration manager. SSP engine hosts your server adapters. It has all the instances of your server adapter. It is installed in a DMG. Your SSP CM configuration manager is installed in the core network, and this piece of software stores or contains all the configuration details, and whenever is required, it pushes configuration detail to your SSP engine. Okay, now let's move on, and the point number 2. Point number 2 is your organization, which is normally the case, can have multiple SSP engines. Okay, can have multiple SSP engines to support failover or to support the load balancing. Okay, so say suppose I have one more SSP engine installed in the DMG. Okay, do I need another SSP CM for this SSP engine as well? So question is no. Sorry, answer is no. Okay, you need only one configuration manager. One configuration manager can manage multiple SSP engines. You don't need to install the SSP engine again. You need only one SSP engine, and the same SSP engine can manage all your SSP engines. Okay, so let me repeat this again. You need to have only one configuration manager, SSP configuration manager, that can manage all your SSP engine in your infrastructure. You don't need multiple SSP configuration managers. Okay, so now because we have two SSP engines installed in the DMG, okay, as you can see here, we have to define two engine definitions in the SSP CM. Okay, engine 1 and engine 2. Okay, now all the adapter related configurations is always associated with a specific engine. So E1, say suppose have A, B, and C adapters. E2 has uh, X, Y, and Z adapters. So when we create adapters, basically we associate that adapter with a specific engine. And your configuration manager is smart enough to push the configurations to a specific engine. Okay, if say suppose you make some change in the A adapter, right, then uh, this configuration will be pushed to E1 engine. It will not be pushed to E2 engine because A1 is associated with the E1. Okay, so your configuration manager take care of all these details for you. Okay, and so this is the point. You do not need multiple SSP configuration manager to manage your infrastructure. One configuration manager is capable enough to manage all the SSP engines. And the baseline is, I hope you have understood, SSP engine hosts your adapters. Okay, it has instances of your adapter. Okay, running instances of your adapter. Configuration manager just stores the configuration. Okay, and so always remember, if you define a adapter, okay, do not expect your adapters or your port for the adapter will be open in this box, SSP CM box. Ports for the adapt communication adapters will always open in the engine box. Okay, like 24. So 24 port for the FTP adapter will be open in the SSP engine box, not the SSP CM box. I'm emphasizing on this part because I have seen people get confused uh, at this point. Okay, HTTP, if you define an HTTP adapter, okay, so definition, your configuration resides in the CM. Okay, but when you push, when you start the SSP engine and SSP configuration manager, port for the HTTP adapter, say suppose port was 80, will be open in SSP engine box, not in the SSP CM box. Okay, this is very important point you need to always remember. Okay. Okay, so okay, now in the next video, I mean the next session, we will see what all other applications we have that is installed in the core network, like your SI will be installed here, right? And SSP engine will be communicating to SI, and we will also have here perimeter server installed, right? So actually your SSP engine will communicate to perimeter server, and your perimeter server will communicate to SI, right? So we'll discuss that in our next sessions. But for now, let's focus on the installation. Okay. So now I hope you have understand uh, these two components. Okay. Now let's go and install these two softwares. Okay. Okay. So this is my virtual machine. Okay, where I'm going to install uh, SSP CM and SSP engine. Now, one more point I want to make here so that you do not get confused. Okay, the point is, as you can see in this diagram, and I have explained it, SSP engine is installed in the core network, and SSP CM is installed in the SSP engine is installed in the DMG, and SSP CM is installed in the core network, right? So these two softwares are always installed in different server boxes. Okay, in different server boxes, but I do not have a lot of virtual machine. I mean, I can create virtual machine in my system, but if I open the multiple virtual machines in my laptop, then it will become slow and create trouble. Okay, so for the simplicity, for our understanding and the training, what I'm going to do is I will install, okay, SSP engine and SSP CM in the same box. Okay, same box. When I'm saying same box, same, you can understand it as same server, same laptop, same computer. Okay, for me, this same box is basically virtual machine VM, which is running in my. I have a VM for Windows XP VM, and which is running on my Windows 10. Okay, so in this virtual machine, which is Windows XP operating system virtual machine, I will be installing these two software, and I will demonstrate uh, all the configuration and the details of SSP infrastructure. Just for your understanding, it does not matter that these two softwares are installed. I mean, it definitely matters, right? But in the real world, it will never be the case that these two softwares are installed in the same server, right? But from the configuration point standpoint, or from your understanding standpoint, everything remains same, right? All the configurations, the way you will create the adapters, the way you define the engines in the CM, everything will same, right? And for now, if you really want to make more sense of out of this entire thing, just consider that these two components and or the piece of software are installed and running in different boxes. But actually, I will be installing it in the same box. So your learning will remain same. Everything will remain same. Okay. So this is uh, what it is. Okay. So this is, I have downloaded SSP engine and SSP configuration manager. Okay. And as you know that I have Windows XP installed in my virtual machine. So I have Windows XP operating system where I'm going to install SSP configuration manager and SSP engine. So this is my SSP configuration manager and this is my SSP engine. So first I will install SSP configuration manager, and after that I will install SSP engine. Okay. So to install SSP configuration manager, just double click on this exe file and it will start the extracting your installables. Okay, so let's wait for it to end. There you go. Okay. Okay. So click on the next. It is asking where you want to, on which folder and which location you want to install the SSP configuration manager. I will leave it as it is. So I'm choosing the default location where SSP configuration manager normally uh, installs. Okay. Next, this port. Remember this port always. Okay. And I would prefer to make a note of it. Okay, I will create a file readme. Click on here. This is SSP CM port, and this port is this. Okay, got it. I make a note of this port. Now, what is this port? Remember, I explained you SSP configuration manager and SSP engine communicates with each other, right? When two software components are communicating with each other, it means there has to be have a port open. Okay, so this is the port on which your SSP, do you see, SSP configuration manager listen for requests from SSP engine. Okay, so this is the port on which SSP configuration manager will listen for information or the request from SSP engine. Okay, SSP engine which is installed in the core network. So remember this port. You need to make a note of it. Next, passphrase. Passphrase. If you remember, I also explained you that for the installation of SSP configuration manager or SSP engine, we do not need any database, right? We don't need any database. Your SSP configuration manager store all the configurations in files, and those files are installed, or those files are resides in your file system. But those files are encrypted. So this is the password using which your files are encrypted. I mean, it definitely uses some other technique also, but this password also has a significance for encryption of those files, right? You also need to make a note of this passphrase, right? Because this passphrase you need when you start or stop your configuration manager. Okay, you always need this you will be asked to provide password or this passphrase when you start or stop your configuration manager. So SSP CM passphrase. I will give some passphrase here. Next, this is another information that you need to make a note of. Right? This is your SSP CM web server port, and the port is 8.43. Okay, now let's see what it is. Okay, mm, so SSP configuration manager. Okay, SSP configuration manager is where you define or where you provide your configurations, right? To provide the configuration, or you need a user interface, right? To set the configurations or to write the configuration, you need an user interface, right? So suppose you need a field where you will write the adapter name. You need another field where you will be writing the port numbers. You need another field where you will write the active port range or the passive port range for your FTP or FTPS adapter, right? So you need a user interface. So now let me tell you, SSP configuration manager is a browser based application. or I will say it's a web application. Okay. Now, if you are familiar with the client server architecture, or J2E, or Java EE, or the web applications, you will know that web applications can be installed only on a web server, right? Web server like your Tomcat. Tomcat is a very good example, a very familiar example of web server. So when you install a web server, you define a port. On that port, your web server runs, right? Once you installed your web server on a specific port, you can install web application on that web server, right? So for web applications, you need web server, right? As your SSP configuration manager is a web application, right? You need a web server, right? And that web server will be installed automatically by your by this installer. Sorry, but here you are just defining port number for that web server. So your installer will automatically install the web server, and that web server will be configured to run on this port. Okay, and after doing that, your WAR file or your web application, which web application? SSP CM web application, right, will be deployed on that web server. So the main point that I'm trying to make here is, this is web server, SSP web server port number on which your SSP CM web application will be deployed. This port number has nothing to do with the HTTP server adapter that you will be configuring in your SSP engines or in the SSP CM. Okay, it has nothing to do with your communication between SSP configuration manager and SSP engine, right? It's just a port number for your web server on which uh, SSP configuration manager will be deployed, and that's it. And technically, it has nothing. This port number has nothing to do with the actual functionality or the core functionality of SSP engine. Okay, so this is the point. Click on install. Okay, done. Your configuration manager installation is complete. Next, we will install SSP engine. So again, I clicked on the exe file of SSP engine. Next, you need to provide the location where your SSP engine will be installed in your server box. If you do not want, if you want to change it, you can change it. If you do not want to, you don't want to change, don't change it. I'm not going to change it. I like default. Next, what is this port number? Very important. Okay, and I will write this in my readme file. SSP engine port, which is this. Okay, very important. Okay, this is the port number on which your SSP engine will listen for connection from configuration manager. Let me open my diagram. Do you see that? I explained you SSP configuration manager will connect to SSP engine and push the configuration. Push the configuration like this, right? SSP configuration manager will able to connect your engine only when this engine will listen on a specific port, right? If there is a port open by the application, then only it will able to connect and push the configuration, right? So this port that we are defining here, right, that you just now saw, is that port opened by your SSP engine? Is the port opened by your SSP engine, right? For the SSPCM, that is the port on which SSP engine will connect and send the configuration, right? Okay. So this is the port. You need to make a note of it. Click on next. Again, it is asking for the passphrase. So you need to provide a passphrase and you need to make a note of it, and you always need to remember it, because when you bring down SSP engine, SSP engine will ask you to provide the passphrase that you gave while the installation. Okay, so I'm giving a passphrase. Okay, so my config engine is installing. Installing. Done. So your configuration manager and configuration engine is installed. Okay, now we are going to start these two softwares, and then we'll do a couple of more things. SSP engine, and this is bin. Okay, so to start the SSP engine, you need to go on the installation directory, right, which is your SSP, and then you need to go to the bin directory. Okay, there is a command called the start engine. Okay, you need to run this command to start configuration SSP engine. Okay, cd oh, yeah, there you go, start engine. Okay, so IBM Sterling Secure Proxy is ready for service. Very good, right? Now we are going to start SSPCM. Go to the bin directory, cd, and in the bin directory there is a command called start cm. Okay, so you need to run this command to start configuration manager. Start configuration manager. Remember this. Yeah, there you go. Start cm. Click enter and wait. Okay, so my configuration manager is also started. Okay, now because my configuration manager has been started, I am ready to play around play around this SSP infrastructure. Okay, so here you can see the URL where from where you can access the configuration manager. Okay, if you remember this port number 8443, this is the port that we configured while installing the configuration manager. This is the port on which your web server is running, and on that web server SSP configuration manager is installed. Okay, so I will open my browser and we'll go to that location. Okay, so this is login page for your IBM Sterling Secure Proxy Configuration Manager. Okay, default user ID password for configuration manager is admin password. Click on the sign in. Okay, this is home page of your configuration manager. Okay, in during this course we will cover all these options, every single options in detail. Okay, we will also learn about these option that you see here: engine, adapters, netmap, policies. Okay, but for today we want to set up our infrastructure first. Okay, now because we have installed SSPCM and SSP engine. What is the next thing that you would like to do? Anyone? Yes. The next logical thing has to connect SSP configuration manager with the SSP engine, right? Come to my diagram. Next logical thing will be connect your SSP configuration manager to SSP engine, right? So that SSP configuration manager push the configuration to SSP engine if there is one. Okay. So now let's learn how to define engine. Right. To define an engine, click on the arrow button, actions arrow button. Click on new engine. Okay. In this page, you can you have to define the SSP engine detail. Okay. So back to engine host. Okay. Here you need to define the host name of your SSP engine. Okay, so say suppose IP address of this box or this engine is 1.1.2.3. Okay, 1.1.2.3. So what value you will give here? 1.1.2.3. This is the IP address of the system where you have installed SSP engine. Okay, now because in our scenario I have installed the SSP engine and SSP configuration manager in the same box. I can use localhost or I can use 127.0.0.1, right? And that's it. Okay, so these are the other few things that we will see in detail. Basics, and click on the save. Okay, uh, I should have write a good engine name, but anyways. So now click on the monitoring. Okay, click on this engine status. Okay, If you click on the monitoring, right, in this page, right, and then if you click on the engine status, right, it will show you all the engines that has been defined in the configuration manager. Okay, so in our case we have only one engine, we define only one engine, right, in the configuration manager. That is why you see only one entry here. But as I explained you in the diagram, if you have multiple engines, configuration engines, right, defined in your DMZ, right, you can provide the details of all these engines, right, and you have defined the all these engines in the SSP configuration manager, right, then you will see multiple rows here. Okay, so now as you can see here, my SSP engine is running, right. Do you see this green button? It indicates that SSP engine is running, and SSP configuration manager is connected to your SSP engine, right. And if you see this column, last pushed, so your SSP configuration manager periodically push the configuration to your SSP engine, right, if you do not do anything. But if you want to forcefully push the configuration, and normally we will do this because we want to uh, push the configuration to configuration engine as soon as we make some change in the configuration manager, right. So to forcefully push the configurations, select the radio button in front of the engine on which you want to push the configuration, and then click on the push button, right. This is the version of your um, um, configuration engine, and that's the version of CM. This is version of your engine. Okay, if you want, you can stop your engine from here. Okay, now remember one thing here, you can stop a engine from configuration manager, but you cannot start an engine from your configuration manager. If you want to start the engine, you have to go to the bin directory and run the start engine command again. Okay, click on the batch. Okay, 2. So batch 2 is this is the name of my engine definition, SSP engine definition, right. If I have defined any adapters, right, for this engine, then those will show up and lined up here. Okay, so that is the installation configuration of SSP engine and CM in the Windows. In the next session, okay, or after 2 sessions, I will also show you how to install configuration manager and configuration engine in Unix box. Okay, and I will be using the Ubuntu uh, for that demonstration. Okay, so that's it, I think, for this session, and let's meet on next session, and we'll see what else we can learn. Okay, chalo, bye bye.